Hi, I'm Lorene Sauro, and I'm a certified functional nutrition practitioner. And today we're going to be talking about feeding your microbes again. We talk about that a lot. And so we're going to talk today about what it means to underfeed them and therefore what you can do in order to provide more nutrients and signals. We talk about signals a lot that will be helpful for your gut microbes and therefore helpful for the function of your body. So most of you we're all have been taught this. We feed our body. We're not thinking that we're feeding our gut. But now what we want to do is start looking at this concept of feeding the gut because that in turn feeds the body. So most nutrition advice focuses on feeding the body. Things like calories, macros, like fats, carbs, protein, nutrients. These is what dominates the conversation. And it's such a small part of the story. The gut does not respond to these nutrients the way we think they do. And therefore, by not having the conversation about the gut microbes, we're missing most of the conversation. The gut responds to signals, patterns, and exposure, and not just to food quantity or quality. So we have to start thinking about our food in a different light. So, why does this get missed? Well, eating well is often equated with gut health, and healthy diets are assumed to be biologically complete, even though there's multiple types of healthy diets and they differ. And so why anyone would think one would be complete, I'm not really sure. Gut function is reduced to basically talking about digestion, and gut function is so much more than that. Everything you are is involved with microbes that you need to stay healthy and have everything work the way it's supposed to work. A nutritional adequacy does not guarantee biological communication. And when we're talking about microbes, that's what we're talking about. They communicate. They communicate with each other, they communicate with the rest of the body, and all of this determines how we feel. So, what does the gut actually respond to? The gut immune system responds to the diversity of the inputs. So, basically, how many different types of food do you eat? What is the variety? And again, this is not to pour a bunch of different foods into you all at once. It's looking at, what your overall diet is, how many different foods can you work in a day, in a week, in a month, in a season. This is all about diversity of the different types of foods. And when you start thinking about things that you could eat that your microbes are not used to, this is diversity. But it's also about repeated exposure. And of course, you can't be eating all these different diverse foods. It's too many, you'll be too full, and you won't enjoy your food. So we often talk about microdosing as a means to do little small inputs of food into an existing meal in order to increase the diversity and at the same time not overwhelm you or the microbes with the amount of food. So low level consistent signals is what we're looking for. And there's going to be patterns formed as a result of continuous exposure to these different signals. The gut learns from patterns, not from meals. So, how people accidentally stopped feeding the gut, because this is not new. Repeating the same foods in different forms is one of the most common ways we don't feed our gut. Large dietary changes without any consistency. So, this could be anything from stopping and starting different diets or pulling foods out randomly and leaving them out for periods of time with no pattern or thought to it. Or you're removing the foods faster than they are reintroduced. So, in other words, you're cutting foods out, but you're not reintroducing those foods back in, and you're not reintroducing new foods in any consistent way. Focusing, of course, on nutrients instead of exposure. So, if we're eating whole foods, we're getting vitamins, minerals, fats, carbs, proteins. They're being taken care of on that end. Now, what you have to do is think about all the other things that are in food. If you look at that picture on the right, there's all kinds of different phytonutrients in all those different foods, and they all play a role in signaling microbes in the gut. Signals are going to disappear if we are not careful, and when the signals disappear, so do the microbes. So why are healthy diets can still miss the gut connection? Clean eating often reduces variability. Foods are chosen for control, not for communication. And again, this is something we have to think about. There's a little communication system going on in our gut. between our microbes and our food, and then with our microbes and the rest of our body. Diversity becomes theoretical, not practical. Again, we have to do this in a way that fits our diet and lifestyle. And nutritious doesn't always mean informative. So what do I mean by that? You could have a very nutritious food or several of them, but they all contain the same type of nutrient signals for the microbes, and it's just not enough. So what are the costs of missing these signals? Well, when the signaling declines, immune tolerance narrows, which means you're going to be more reactive to things, not just food. It means you're going to catch more colds and you won't get rid of them as quickly. This is all about what immune tolerance is about. Your reactivity increases, your resilience disappears, and the systems in your body become fragile. That's why you don't recover fast enough from the cold, or you get more of them than you used to. The gut adapts quietly, and it can go in the wrong direction. So this is why we want to have a really good understanding of what it's looking for. So let's look at feeding the gut versus feeding the body. When you feed the body, you're looking at calories, macronutrients, micronutrients. When you're feeding the gut, you're looking at repetition, variety over time, and exposure. So the more you expose the gut to, the more variety you can get into there, and the more you repeat this pattern, the better. And then this is going to provide consistent signals that the gut can use all the time. So what does feeding the gut actually look like? So there's high-level characteristics: small amounts, repeated contact, layered inputs. So layered inputs means that you are putting in different layers of food. Don't think visually, think more like different categories. So if you are feeding different types of microbes, you can put those microbes into categories and put the foods that feed them into categories, same with the herbs and the spices, and you can develop a pattern of layering these different categories together so that you are feeding a wider range of microbes. And then, of course, you want to increase the diversity over time. So this means that you could be going one food at a time with little small amounts, building up tolerance if you have food sensitivities. Or when you're introducing new foods, you don't have food sensitivity, but you're introducing new foods, you're going to go with a smaller amount first just to let your microbes, sort of be woken up a bit and make sure there's enough there to handle that. And then you gradually increase the amount. The gut is fed by repetition, not restriction. Why big changes often backfire? So large changes, this is when you pull out a large number of foods or you go on a specific type of diet, they can overwhelm the regulatory process. And inconsistent exposure prevents learning. The system cannot stabilize. And if it can't stabilize, you're not going to get consistent communication between your food and the microbes in your body. Intensity does not replace consistency. So you can't make up for it at a later date by eating a whole pile of other food to make up for what you took out. It doesn't work that way. So let's reframe the process. Progress is not bigger changes, more rules, perfect execution. Progress is stable patterns, gradual exposure, and adaptation over time. Sensitivity often reflects missing signals, and the system has lost familiarity. Exposure has been reduced but not scaled. So in other words, it was done all at once and you sort of just kind of crashed the system. Sensitivity is often a signal problem, not a food problem. So in other words, there's things that are supposed to happen in the gut when the food arrives based on what the microbes that are there are going to do, and the right microbes are not there to do that job. Underfeeding the gut happens when signals are reduced, exposure is avoided, patterns are inconsistent, even when food quality is high. You can eat well and still underfeed your gut because the gut needs information, not just nutrition. Feeding the gut is about signaling, not perfection. And this is where resilience begins. If you like the idea of using small strategic food inputs instead of restrictive diet, and this resonates with you, I teach this approach in a step-by-step in my free training, the 4-step framework to build a resilient gut and a healthier you. You'll find the link below in the description box. And it shows you how to feed your microbes without changing your entire diet. You can learn more about this entire process in the gut balance method, and the link for that is also below in the description box. And if you like this content, please hit like and subscribe, and this will help me do more content and get more information out there. Thank you.